So you want to build a bog garden, but it's September and you're worried that maybe your plants are going to have some really big adverse reactions. Let's find out. So today I decided I really want to put together a bog garden for my backyard, but it's growing season. These plants are all growing like huge. Look at this leucophylla, it's gigantic. I'm going to do this and I'm going to show you how to do it in a way that removes a little bit of the stress from the plants, because that's really what you're trying to avoid. When you pot things up while they're in the active growing season, you can shock them and then they either abandon some of their leaves, these are all just modified leaves, or they just don't grow very well. So I'm going to show you some of the methods for that. And I actually have a couple of things here. So first I have a non-draining pot because I like a nice non-draining bog pot. You might prefer one with a drainage plug so that you can take the plug out and let it sit in water. I like these. I also have our actual peat and perlite mix that you would get in the bag. And what I've done is I've already added distilled water to this to get this nice and gloppy, because you want it to be already wet before you start to work with it. Otherwise it's going to be too powdery. I have a selection of plants here. I'm probably not going to use all of them, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to start by, I'm going to compact down all of this peat moss that I already have in here, and I'm going to keep adding peat moss to it. While I do this, I just want to talk a little bit about something that affects a lot of people, but I don't think we talk about. And that is, I had a beautiful carnivorous plant collection in this backyard. And we had moved in here just a few years ago and I'd started landscaping and being a crazy plant person. But then as we moved the nursery, Peter got ill with cancer. And that really threw my whole world for a loop. And I started helping to care for him along with his other wonderful people in his life, like Damon and his best friend Liz and a lot of the Calcarn crew. And over the 2 years that Peter was ill, I lost a lot of plants, because the truth of it is that I was mentally not in a place where I could come home and care for a million things. I have 2 kids. Sam is actually filming this for me right now. And I just had to kind of go into triage mode where I could just only do what I could do. I had very little bandwidth for things. And what happened was I put a lot of plants in the ground back here. I started to build all these gardens and I had a bunch of carnivorous plants, and all of a sudden I couldn't take care of them. And it felt awful. And I'm telling you this story because this is my beginning of my new bogs again in my backyard, which is really joyful, but it comes out of a period of my life that was quite rough. And I hear those kinds of stories from you guys all the time too, that you lost your plants due to a big bout of depression or something really big happening in your life. And people tend to feel terrible about it, like so guilty, like they're a bad plant parent. And what I want to say to you today is it happens to all of us and it's okay. So don't beat yourself up if that happens, just rebuild. And I'm finding a lot of joy in the rebuilding. So what I'm doing now as I go to add more plants to my collection, I'm really thinking about what those plants are, and I'm just learning from the lessons of the ones that I put in before that maybe I wouldn't have done a second time, or maybe this time I'm going to be more selective about the kind of leucophylla I bring into my life because I want this one to be really, really veinated, things like that. I am trying to find joy in the rebuild as much as I can, and I want you guys to do that too, because grief, depression, illness, all of these things are going to hit all of us, and you might lose some plants. Please don't beat yourself up. All right, so Sam can kind of zoom in here. I'm just going to show you. I've got a bunch of peat moss in here. Now, I compact it down pretty hard because over time this stuff settles, and if you don't compact it down, within 6 months it's going to be like settled down so far. So I'm going to add a little bit more peat moss to this, but I'm actually going to place my plants first. So what I'm going to do first is, again, I'm using our bags so you can just see how I like to work with them, because I think this is a pretty easy way to do it. So first of all, I always use distilled water. So this is a bottle of distilled because I still have to get my RO up and running. I'm going to take my bag, and I actually just like to glug it in a nice amount, and I'm just going to let that work its way through, and that'll get that soil nice and damp, which is what I want. And as I work with it, I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm also going to take the chance to clean that hand off. I'm going to let that sit for a second. Let's talk about placing plants. One of the tips I like to do is when the soil line is still pretty low, I'm going to put my plants in here and kind of see how they're going to look. I love leucophylla. They always have their best pictures in the fall, and that's super fun. I have this beautiful Flava rubricorpora that I'm obsessed with. I'm going to put this in here too because what I want is full season color. This is going to grow first in the spring. This will be one of the later ones. Another plant I have here is this albumensis. It's Damon's clone, and I love it. It's so yellow and gold, and it's going to have beautiful pictures as the season goes on. It's a really beautiful fall plant. So that's pretty full. And the truth of it is, this is going to fill out so fast that this bog will be choked with Sarracenia really fast. So now I'm going to think a little bit about the play of color and form and if I want to change it up. So maybe I don't want this guy in here because I love the idea of spring flava pitchers and late autumn leucophylla pitchers, but maybe what I want now is one of my favorite fly traps, Chupacabra. So if you don't know the legend of the Chupacabra, go look it up. I named this plant because I'm obsessed with that legend. So maybe I'll just do that because that's going to fill out a little bit less and I think it'll less choke out the planter. You can cram this full if that's what you want because you just want to have a ton of plants in it to begin with. I don't want to have to repot this that quickly, so that's why I'm going to do that. I'm also going to add in a little pot of, there's some fork leaf Drosera and some threadleaf Drosera. This is Tracei. I'm going to add that there. And my idea is you're going to see it from the front and the sun is going to hit it from the front because the Sarracenia can shadow out other plants. I really want to think about my placement. All right, so I like that. I like that a great deal. I'm going to kind of think about that. You could leave the pots in and fill the soil in around them and then you have perfect pot-shaped holes, but we're going to throw caution to the wind and do it differently. So I'm going to add in a bunch of soil. Now, or sorry, it's not soil, it's technically peat and perlite. 5 parts peat moss to 1 part perlite if you want to make this at home. Make sure your peat moss is fertilizer free and always use distilled water, even in this process. It's very important. Because this is a non-draining bog, I am going to leave a line for the soil. So that way, if this is the lip of the pot, I want the soil to be about here because I want to be able to water thoroughly into the top and let it soak in. And when the rain comes, I just tip the pot over, like when it gets really full. Some people like to drill holes. I'm a little bit more lazy. I'll just tip the pot over. It doesn't bother me. But I know this peat moss, as much as I'm pushing it in, is actually going to still settle a ton. So I'm going to fill it pretty aggressively. Okay. So this is my tip for late season repotting or bog garden making. I'm actually just going to chunk this plant out whole into my hand. I'm leaving all the soil on because truthfully this plant doesn't really need repotting. Squeeze the sides of the plant. This is the moss that was lining the bottom. We don't need that. This plant does not need to be repotted. So to preserve some of its growth, to make sure it shocks up less, I'm going to pot it whole. Now the one thing I'm going to do is, this is where the old rhizome grew last year. You can see these are all cut off. This is the direction the plants are growing right now. So I don't want to put that against the side of the pot. Instead, I want to put that this way. I want them to grow into the middle. And I literally am just going to plonk that in whole. Next, we're going to take this flava I'm obsessed with. We'll rip off some of these old pitchers. Again, squeezing the sides of the pot. Do a little shimmy, gentle push. I don't need this moss. I'm going to gently pull it out from the roots. Now, again, on this plant, this is the old part of the rhizome. This is where the fresh growth is. This is the direction this plant's growing. So I'm going to put it growing this way. I made a hole with my hand and now I'm just shoving her in. Okay. Easy so far, right? I'm going to tuck the sundew kind of in the back. This one you don't have to worry about directionality. We'll do a couple squeezes. Sometimes it's not wanting to come out. I'm going to pull gently on the top of the plant. Out she comes. And you know, the truth of it is the sundew's going to get some dirt on it, which is irritating. Don't try to get it off. It's a fool's errand. You'll spend the rest of your life trying to pick dirt off of the sundew after a transplant. Do your best to not get the dirt on there in the first place. It gets so stuck in the dew. If you try to rinse it, you're just going to make the plant look sad. Okay. Last one is going to be my Chupacabra. Oops, there's a little weed. We'll remove that. We're going to do our trick again. This one doesn't want to come out, so this is a good example. I'm squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. And people often tell me, oh, I couldn't get it out. Just keep doing it, keep working it. You can see it's very slowly coming out because I'm just going to stick with it. And now, look, I don't need that. That's okay. This fly trap, shockingly gigantic fly trap, probably has very little roots. This guy doesn't really have a particular growth direction, so I'm just going to put it right here because I want it to be kind of in the front. I'm going to trigger some traps when I do this. Don't freak out. That's totally okay. And see, I did a good job not getting dirt on the sundew until I potted up the fly trap, but I'm not stressed about it. Now my dirt is very wet, so I don't need to really water this in. If your soil was a little less wet, you're definitely going to water your plants in with a nice watering can over the top. And then one last thing I'm going to do, again, a little quick rinse. I really like to put some decorative sand and rocks over the top of a freshly potted bog garden because I just think it finishes it nicely. You don't have to do this. I often, my kid, I have kids, they're 12 and 14, but when they were little, all they did was bring home rocks. I'm sure parents out there, you're off for a walk. For some reason, your child suddenly has a pocket full of the neighbor's rocks. It's always mortifying, but I actually just saved those, and all the special rocks I started putting in my plants. Not that Sam remembers, but he brought me many special rocks. Many of them are in my potted plants. All right. So I think that looks pretty good. Only other thing I might do is I have a whole pot of Utricularia livida Maryheart, which is a beautiful, showy terrestrial Utricularia. And it grows like a carpet and it has these flowers, and this usually in the summer, but often spring as well. I'm going to take some plugs of that. Like literally, I'll cut a plug with a knife and put that in there so it can spread. But for now, I'm really happy. This is my late season bog garden. I expect very little shock because I didn't really mess with the roots. So if you want to do it, go for it. And remember to find joy in your plants, no matter what the reason is for you doing them. All right, happy growing.